Now we would like to introduce someone who has lived through many of the experiences that Michelle has just highlighted for us and has seen the positive impact that Nexus has made on her family. Sara Schneider is the mother of 3 children, one of whom directly benefited from the support of Nexus Family Healing. So Sara, why don't you come on up and join us? And I want to say thank you for joining us tonight to tell us your story.
Wow. Thank you, Amelia, for that warm welcome. I appreciate it. Thank you to Nexus for inviting me to speak tonight and share our story. And thank you to my son, Luke, for allowing me to share this story of hope. Like she said, my name is Sara Schneider. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an adoptive mother, I'm a biological mother, I'm a special needs parent, and I'm an advocate. Our story began when Luke was adopted, and it quickly ramped up by the time he was 9 months old. Because when he was 9 months old is when I began pounding on doors for him. I asked our doctor questions right out of the gate. Something seemed a little off with this child. She looked at me like I was nuts. I persisted. I said, no, he's more demanding than a typical baby, and he seems to be almost a victim mentality. I know that's crazy to say as a parent, but those were some of the feelings I was thinking as early as 9 months old, and our doctor said, you're crazy. That can't be the case. He's just a boy. You haven't raised a boy before. I knew in my heart that I had to keep fighting for this child. By the age of 2, we were in fight or flight, and that means we were either in a full-scale tantrum fight or he was on the move. He was scaling walls, sticking fingers in sockets, never played with an actual real toy most of his childhood. By the age of 4, he did receive a diagnosis for ADHD. It felt like a Band-Aid. I knew that that was not the full story with our son. I was happy to get a little bit of insight, but I knew there was still more. Before I tell you more stories about the hard times with Luke, I do want to share a little bit about his heart. When Luke was 5, we were on our way out the door to go to kindergarten with all of our children in tow. Luke looks up at me and says, Mama, can I take that new pair of shoes in the closet that are Bella's, his big sister? I was frazzled. I was carrying all the bags and all the backpacks and all the things moms do. But it took a minute, and I said, Buddy, why do you want to take those shoes? And he said, there's a girl in my class and she can't play gym because she doesn't ever have any shoes. That was the heart of the kid that we were fighting for. His heart is gold. Despite all these behavioral tendencies and these things that were in his brain causing him to act aggressively or with anger, his heart was pure. And that's what I would fight for every day of his life. At 6 years old, Luke rejected physical touch. We gave him treatment for a RAD, reaction attachment disorder. He was able to have some help through some play therapy. At age 7, he was obsessed with fire, danger, anything sharp objects. Such is the case with a lot of kids like him. One day when we were walking into the YMCA, a place we frequented for just a tiny bit of respite, I bumped right into a sign that said, NAMI meeting next Tuesday. If you don't know, NAMI is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. I knew enough to know that, and I knew enough to seek out the help because we were struggling at home. The next week, we packed up our kids and we showed up at the meeting, and we were the only ones that showed up. Those 2 women poured into us, listened, no judgment, were so empathetic. It was the first time in our life with him that I felt heard, I felt understood, and I felt like I'm not crazy. The next 2 meetings, they worked with us to get to work. They taught me everything under the sun that I did not already know about mental illness and raising a child with special disabilities. Things like CADI waivers and medical assistance and PCAs, the SMIRT program, all of these acronyms that are out there in the mental health world that I knew nothing about until that moment. It was after learning from them that I truly began to know my role as his advocate. Armed with this new info, I got to work. At age 9, we got a new neuropsych evaluation for Luke that gave just a little bit more in-depth information. At that time, he was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome disorders, brain damage as a result of fetal alcohol, and undiagnosed mood disorders. I'm going to tell you that no parent wants more labels slapped on their children. We don't want that. But what it did do was give me a better insight into his particular challenges so that we could better help him and advocate for him. We left the doctor appointment that day with a very bleak outlook. The doctor said a lot of times kids with these kind of diagnoses lead a life of crime, addiction, and worse. It wasn't long after that that violence began in our house. We installed locks on doors. We lived in fear. We had cameras installed thanks to our new caddy waiver, and we hid all of the sharp objects in our home because they presented a danger. By age 10, we were all controlled by outbursts of violence and aggression. It was at that time that our case manager first presented us the idea of residential treatment. I am not gonna lie, I was not on board for that. I thought, I can handle this myself. I should be able to handle this myself. I thought it would mean I was a bad parent. I thought I should be able to fix it. I was worried about what other people would think. I was worried about my heart. Would I be able to handle this? And I was scared that he would resent us for this choice. With some talking with my husband and a lot of prayer, we thought about the good things. Luke would get the treatment he needs 24/7. We might get the respite that we need as a family. We would all receive therapy that was desperately needed. Luke would get the support from peers and loyal caretakers. Luke would get the proper schooling. And most importantly, our home would hopefully experience safety and peace. We were on board. We thought residential treatment would be the great option for Luke. So we began the process. It turned out there was only 2 facilities in our state that would take Luke at his age at that time. They were both full with a waiting list. We continued the process and moved forward, and we also set out to receive approval from our county for help in the financial aspect. I'll never forget the day my husband and I rolled in there and sat in an office with 6 legal representatives and a few county representatives and pled our case to them, only to be told no. Our case did not warrant their help. It wasn't severe enough. I was devastated. And if that wasn't enough, then came COVID. If you're like me, a shudder just went through you, a little PTSD. And if you have a special needs kid, it was really hard. All the services that we had previously that we were so lucky to have were gone. No one could come to our home. We had to do everything over Zoom. I had to school him while working, while raising other kids, while being a wife. I think many of you know what I mean. It was very difficult and became easily one of the worst times in our life. Luke became increasingly agitated and more angry over that time, often having violent outbursts. He ran away from home 3 times. There were 75 holes punched or with objects thrown into his room. And there were 2 violent attacks on me. In 2021, it became aware to us that Nexus Mille Lacs was opening up for mental illness. We quickly applied for a position in that facility. We went again to our county to seek help, and with some of the, quite honestly, hard things that happened in 2020, this time they did approve us for residential treatment and they would support us. At age 12, Luke entered Nexus Mille Lacs in Onamia. He turned 13 1 week later and exited Nexus Mille Lacs right before turning 14. Those first days were brutal. I can't explain to you how hard it is to leave your child at a facility. I cried the entire way home, and then for days on end. And then your son calls you and tells you, you need to get me out of here. Crying, upset. We had to hold hands and reassure ourselves of those positives that we knew would come from Nexus. I have to tell you, it was only a matter of weeks before we heard the voice of our boy coming through again, where he was experiencing some normalcy and responding to the structure and starting to make friends and loving the caretakers that he had with them. We started to see that he was cooperative and he was starting to enjoy some of the therapy. That was so reassuring to us as parents. We often got to visit Onemia and see Luke, and we would try to have normal family experiences amid some family therapy too, which was super helpful. We got to know the staff, we got to know about his everyday experiences, we got to see a little bit of the life he was living there, and that was a real blessing to our family. Even if we went on a Sunday, we would be able to take him to church and just do some normal family things that were a part of our lives. He enjoyed our visits, and he also enjoyed his visits coming home when he got to just dip back into his life at home for a little bit. And we did that a little more increasingly as it became time for him to be released. Another thing that Luke really enjoyed while he was at Nexus is recreation. He really thrived with recreation. He loved being outside. He loved the fitness center and learning to use all of the equipment properly. He started lifting weights. He was playing football, kickball. He went fishing. He went to the beach, and he did the infamous river bobbing. That was a big thing at Nexus Mille Lacs, and he often did that. He even went on trips to the cities to go to Timberwolves games and the Twins games. We felt like he was getting such great experiences with these recreational programs because it really helps with the normalcy of life, to give these kids these great experiences, not to mention the outdoors and the sunshine and all that good does for you. As we neared time to leave, with about 2 weeks left before he was released from Nexus, I wrote something in my journal that I'd like to share with you. Today was the last time I returned Luke to treatment. After 10 months in residential, Luke will come home in just 2 weeks. I feel so proud of the work Luke has done at Nexus over these months away from us. I'm also proud of the work we've done and the sacrifices to get to this point. Has it been perfect? No. Is the work done? Also no. Today, when I left the facility in Mille Lacs, I noticed a tagline under their signing. It read, "Restoring Hope, Reshaping Futures." We showed up here 10 months ago, and we were broken. I felt hopeless, tired, depleted, despair, and quite frankly, I didn't know if it would ever get better. We were in crisis. That time I could not picture or imagine a time where we'd be ready to transition him home. Today, before I returned Luke to Mille Lacs, he and I went to visit his new school. Nexus has right-sized his IEP, and I found a school that would mirror his Nexus experience. When I put in the address to visit the new school, I realized the school was on Hope Street. Nothing is coincidence. I felt God's hand assuring me there would indeed be hope for Luke's future. The enormity of gratitude my husband and I have is indescribable. At an evaluation before treatment, the psychiatrist looked at us and declared, "You are in crisis and need immediate attention." We are grateful to the many angels in our path who've led us to Nexus and supported Luke through the treatment. We are most certainly one family with a restored future and restored hope. Today, Luke is 16 years old. He has a job. He's a sophomore in high school. He has a girlfriend. He's played sports. He's doing well in school. He has many friends. And we have a new language in our home. Thanks to Nexus, we're able to communicate calmly and peacefully. We're able to problem solve and resolve things together with a new language we did not have before sending him to Nexus. Nexus has truly helped give my family hope and give one boy a new life. I hope tonight that you come together to do that for many, many others. Thank you.